Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and the Coffee and Cartridges podcast. Today we're going to talk about what's old is new again. Stay tuned. There's a lot of rumors today about two new cartridges that could be coming out. The 25 Creedmoor and the 22 Creedmoor. And they're pretty much what they sound like, just taking the 6.5 Creedmoor and necking it down to 25 caliber and 22 caliber. And like most of one of these cartridges, I think they would have success. But when you look into these cartridges, you see a lot of lineage there, and you also see a lot of similarities to older existing cartridges. We're mainly today going to talk about the 25 Creedmoor and the 25 caliber. So just in our modern day today, there's not a lot of 25 caliber cartridges out there. And the ones we do have, or have had for years, have a pretty slow twist rate. And so 25 caliber cartridges are kind of limited in their range of bullet weights. And really, you're going to absolutely top out at about 120 grain bullet, maybe even 115 grain bullet, depending on the aerodynamics and shape of the bullet. And then you can get down pretty light. You can get down there pretty light, very similar to like a 75 grain bullet in a 243. The two most popular ones today, and it's not even close, is the 25-06 and the 257 Weatherby, which shoot bullets, in that 75 to 120 grain range, and they shoot them pretty fast. Historically, we have some older cartridges like the 257 Roberts and the 250 Savage that were more geared toward the lighter bullets, but are cool classic cartridges. So if there is a 25 Creedmoor in the next year or so, where will it fit in? Well, let's just take a little bit of a trip back in time. In fact, back to that cartridge I just named, the 250 Savage. So way back in 1915, cartridge designers at Savage were looking to design a light game or varmint cartridge to go in their Model 99 Savage lever action rifle. And there was a goal in mind. I believe his name was Newton that designed the cartridge. His goal was to really get it screaming and to go over 3,000 feet per second. And he took the head or the rim diameter of the 30-06 or the 7 Mauser, that .473, kind of took that design and created a little bit of a different cartridge, and it was in 25 caliber. And he was able to get over 3,000 feet per second, which was the first commercial cartridge to do that. Therefore, it was kind of renamed or also named the 250 3000. The original 250 was shooting an 87 grain bullet at 3,000 feet per second, or a little more, and it had about a 1 in 14 twist. Now that twist rate would later be altered a little bit to get where you could shoot like a 100 grain bullet. Many years from that point, the 243 would pretty much kill the 250 Savage, and to the point in the 60s, Savage just stopped chambering the 250 Savage and began chambering only the 243. But let's stay back in the past. So this cartridge comes out in 1915 and is success, really cool design in their 99 lever action gun. And like I said, the 250 Savage is a dead, obsolete cartridge today, but it did have some pretty cool paths that its design went down, and we're going to go kind of down some of those paths today. Now, the most obvious one was probably the fact that Remington would later neck it down to 22 caliber and come out with a 22 250, which is still very popular today. And we'll get back to the 22 calibers later. But 5 years later, Savage designed a new cartridge based off the 250 3000 Savage called the 300 Savage. Now, I've talked about the 300 Savage a few times on my channel before, and I've called it the first modern cartridge back in 1920. There was about a 50 thousandths taper on the walls of the cartridge of the 250 Savage. On the 300 Savage, they kind of cut that about in half and really straightened it up a little bit and gave it a 30-degree shoulder angle back in 1920. The overall case is very similar, but is slightly shorter than the 250 Savage. The cartridge overall length, however, is longer. A little bit more room for that bullet to go in that chamber. And even though the neck is a little shorter on the 300 Savage, the case body where the powder would be in that reservoir is a little bit longer, therefore giving it more case capacity. So long before P.O. Ackley started to improve cartridges, Savage made a pretty cool cartridge that was improved. Their goal was once again to put this in their 99 model and to get similar performances as a 30-06, which it did an admirable job, but it didn't quite get there. Now, a decade or two later, P.O. Ackley started to improve all the cartridges of that day. He looked at the 30-30, he looked at the 22 Hornet, he looked at the 250 Savage, he looked at the 257 Roberts, and many other cartridges, and he thought, I could improve them by doing something similar to what Savage did, blowing out the taper of the walls, making the shoulders steeper, giving it more case capacity. And so he came out with what he called the 250 Savage Ackley Improved, or the 250 Ackley Improved. And just like all his cartridges, instead of a 30-degree shoulder angle, he had a 40-degree shoulder angle and even more straight walls. And it is known that P.O. Ackley said the 250 Ackley Improved is one of his greatest improvements. Some cartridges, you take a 30-06 or a 308, there's just not much there. If you Ackley improve those cartridges, they just don't seem to do a whole lot. Other cartridges like the 280 Ackley Improved or the 250 Savage seem to have a lot of benefits. And he made the comment that the 250 Savage, or the Ackley Improved version, did have a lot of improvements, and it's one of his best works. So we have we have a divergent path here. We have two improved versions of that original 250 Savage, one necked up to 30 caliber, of course, and one just an improved version by Ackley of the 25 caliber. Now let's go back to that 30 caliber, the 300 Savage. It had a long and storied, successful time in the hunting world, and it's not really common today. A lot of people have old guns chambered in it, but it's not very popular. In 2007, Hornady came out with a cartridge called the 30TC. And this was a co-developed cartridge between Hornady and Thompson Center. And it's kind of funny because the 30TC is kind of doing the same thing that the 300 Savage did and the 308 did, and now the 30TC. They're all kind of trying to come out with a more efficient, shorter, better version of the 30-06. That's kind of what all three of those cartridges' really goal was to replace the 30-06 in a more compact, efficient cartridge. Now, if you compare the 30TC and the 300 Savage, you're going to see that they're very similar. Same shoulder angle, a little bit different dimensions. They're not exactly the same length, and the taper's not exactly the same. There's even less taper in the 30TC than there was in the 300 Savage, but for all intents and purposes, they're very similar. There is a little bit more max pressure rating in the 30TC versus the 300 Savage, but it's really not that different. And if you look here at the Hornady manual, there's like 300 or 400, difference in velocity here. However, unfortunately, Hornady does this sometimes. They're shooting a 22-inch barrel in the 300 Savage and a 26-inch barrel in the 30TC. That's going to amount to probably 100 feet per second difference, maybe a little more just in the barrel length. I do think the 30TC will shoot faster with a little bit higher pressures and slightly more case capacity, and I mean slightly, but I don't think it's quite as much as it shows here. But for all intents and purposes, the 30TC is a pretty cool cartridge. I think this is a good time to point out that all these cartridges that are based off the 250 Savage, whether it's the 250, the 300 Savage, or the 30TC, they're all a little bit smaller than your 308 size cases. So 243, 7mm 08, 260, 308, that is a case. It's just a little bit bigger than your Savage or your Thompson center case. Just an FYI there. All right, now many of you probably have never heard of the 30TC or just don't care about it, right? Because you shoot a 308 and you don't see a point. But the 30TC is kind of famous or infamous, however you look at it, for something, and that's being the parent case to the 6.5 Creedmoor. So around that same time, they took that Thompson center case, that 30TC, and they necked it down to 6.5 caliber. Changed a few things at that point though, because the 6.5 Creedmoor was going to be a target round. The 30TC was more of replacing the 30-06 or replacing the 308 and having a cool new efficient 30 caliber. But the 6.5 Creedmoor was more about long-range target shooting. So for instance, the cartridge overall length of the Creedmoor is longer than the TC because they expected to shoot a higher BC heavy bullet, so they left room for that. They also come out with a match grade chamber basically with tighter tolerances because they were going to shoot it at longer ranges. And they made sure that the twist rate was fast. The twist rate in the 30TC is just 1 in 10 like all the other 30 calibers. But they made sure in that 6.5 Creedmoor that they come out with a 1 in 8 twist so you could shoot the 140 and heavier bullets. And of course we know the 6.5 Creedmoor became extremely successful and then extremely hyped and then extremely overhyped, and now it's extremely hated or hyped. It's just like there's a lot of people that love it or hate it, but it's very, very popular. In fact, it's become, it and the 308 are probably the two most popular rifle cartridges in the world, or at least in America today. You know, a few years later, they took that same exact design of what they went for in that 6.5 Creedmoor and just simply necked it down to 6mm Creedmoor. And a lot of people use it also for long-range target shooting. In fact, it's probably become even more popular than the 6.5 Creedmoor when it comes to long-range target shooting. All right, where does this leave us? So it's very possible that they're going to neck down that 6.5 Creedmoor down to a 25 caliber. What is a 25 caliber? It's simply right in between the 6mm and the 6.5mm. It's like 6.3 or 6.35. It's called the quarter bore. You know, it's kind of a quarter of an inch cartridge, or it's a 6.25 or 6.35 millimeter cartridge. So, you know, it's right there in between the 6 and the 6.5. Now, here's the point I'm trying to make with all this. If you take this proposed 25 Creedmoor, and then you look at the P.O. Ackley improved 250 Savage that was improved by Ackley. So the 250 Ackley improved and the 25 Creedmoor, and you compare them, what do you get? Almost the same thing. Not exactly, but very similar. So I say what's old has become new again. What Ackley did, and I don't actually know the date that he come out with the 250 Savage, but somewhere between the late 30s and early 60s is when he did all of his work. So somewhere in there, many years ago, 60, 70, 80 years ago, he came out with a 250 Ackley improved. And we're getting ready to come out, hopefully, in the next year with a 25 Creedmoor. But what's funny is it's almost the same cartridge. Now, I don't know the twist rate in the Ackley improved 250. I'm going to assume it was 1 in 10. This will probably be 1 in 8. And once again, slightly different shoulder angles, you know, different chamber designs. But for the most part, like if you think the 250 Ackley improved is a cool cartridge, but you hate the 6.5 Creedmoor and you can't stand the thought of a 25 Creedmoor, they're pretty much the same thing. Which brings me to the other cartridge, the 22 Creedmoor. It's the same thing. It's a 6.5 Creedmoor, neck down to 22 caliber. Well, let's go back. Remember, the most famous child of the 250 Savage is not the 300 Savage, it's the 22 250, which is still around today. It's just a neck down 250 Savage and a 22 caliber. Well, Ackley also improved that one. In fact, it's one of his most popular. It's called the 22-250 Ackley Improved. And yes, you know where I'm going. You take the 22-250 Ackley Improved, you compare it to the proposed 22 Creedmoor, it's the same thing. Probably faster twist rate, and of course slightly different shoulder angle, 30 versus 40. It will probably have a 1 in 7 twist rate, I'm assuming, to shoot like those 90 grain burgers, but I'm not positive on that. We might never get an official SAMI standardized, commercially available 25 Creedmoor or 22 Creedmoor, but I think we will. And when they come out, I think they're going to be really successful. And if you're wondering, you know, do I care? Do I want them? Well, if the 250 Savage Improved sounds cool to you, then you're going to like the 25 Creedmoor. If the 22-250 Ackley Improved, which sounds really cool to me, if you like that, then you're going to like the 22 Creedmoor because it's the same thing. Do I plan on getting them? So let's say those two cartridges come out. Do I personally plan on getting them? I don't. I have a 22-250, which I'm established with. I have a 204 Ruger as well, and I just have no desire to. However, if I was starting over, I probably would get the 22 Creedmoor. Do I have a desire to get a 25 Creedmoor? I really don't. But I think it would be really cool. You know, it's probably going to have a 1 in 8 twist and be able to shoot like a 135 grain bullet, which is pretty cool. But that 25 caliber to me just kind of sits in the middle of kind of like no man's land. And I've got a 243, I've got a 6.5 284. I just don't really care about it. And if I was to get a 25 caliber, I'd probably get a 257 Weatherby. I think that's the coolest one to me. If you're going to have that bullet between like 75 and 120 grains, let's just get it moving. Let's get it going fast. So I like that 257 Weatherby. So I probably won't get either cartridge if they come out. But if I had no rifles at all and I was starting over, I probably would. Which leads me to my second topic. I've got one more topic today and then I'll let you go. All right, so my second and last topic today is this. So I'm established with certain cartridges. You know, I love my 30-06, 308, 270 short mag, 6.5 284, and I've got a few other ones. I'm established with them. I like them. I have no desire to sell them or trade them away. I just want to keep loading for them. I just want to keep trying different bullets out and testing different powders. So I like them, okay? But here's a question I'll put out there for you. What if you either sold all your rifles or you just decided to start over, or you were just getting into hunting or target shooting or both, and you just wanted to start a new collection? Where would you go? So I'm just going to give you my perspective. And I've thought a lot about this. It's fun to think about cartridges and which one's better than other cartridges. In fact, that's what this whole channel's about, really. So if for some reason I got rid of all my rifles and decided to start over, would I just go back and get the exact same guns and the exact same platforms with the same scopes and just do a mirror image of what I had done before? No, I would not. I would do things differently. Though I don't regret the rifles I have in the way that I have them in. I like them and I'm glad I have them. But I would do things differently. There would definitely be a part of me that would want to have a 308, that would want to have a 6.5 284, that would want to have a 30-06, and I would be tempted to get those cartridges. But I can see myself going a lot of different ways. So to make this fun, let's just say, what if you were going to start over with your rifle collection? And not so much a collection as I'm trying to find a rifle that's worth a lot of money to put it on a mantle and let people look at it. I'm talking about using my rifles. I'm talking about practical tools. So let's just make it fun. Let's say they could only be cartridges that was developed by Winchester. And then I'll pick a few different manufacturers. So if you told me you can only have 5 rifles and they have to be chambered in cartridges manufactured by Winchester. Would I be okay with that? Absolutely. No question. I can see, okay, I want to shoot varmints, 243. Want a great cartridge for hunting white-tailed deer in Missouri, 308. Want just a little bit more powerful hunting cartridge for anything in the world, 300 Winchester Short Magnum. Want something a little bit in the middle between the 24 and the 30 caliber, something a little bit more flat, maybe a little bit higher BC bullets without the recoil. I'd get a 270 Short Mag, or I'd get a 6.8 Western, one of those two. Then let's just say I want to get something bigger. I mean, I could get the really big stuff for Africa. I'm probably not going to hunt dangerous game, but I could easily go get a 338 Winchester Magnum and use it for moose and elk. So if I had to go with Winchester, I'd be a-okay. What if he said, okay, it's 2023, you got to start out, and you can only have 5 rifles chambered in Hornady cartridges? Would I be okay with that? Absolutely. The first 3 right off the bat that comes to mind: 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, 300 PRC. I'd probably have the 6.5 PRC in a 22-inch barrel, the 7 in a 24, and the 300 in a 26, which would correspond well to the short, long, and magnum length actions. I mean, I could do pretty much anything in this world that I wanted to do with that. And then if I wanted something, if I did want to go to Africa, 375 Ruger, probably not going to Africa. Probably just stick with that 300 PRC as my big game rifle. But let's say I wanted to hunt varmints. I could go with that 6mm Creedmoor. Let's say I want to hunt prairie dogs, 204 Ruger. I could easily go with Hornady. What if it was Nosler? Oh, absolutely. You know, there's some cool cartridges. I'm a big fan of the 27 and the 28. Those are my 2 favorite, I do believe. I'd probably get both of those. If he said you can only have Weatherby cartridges, I'd be fine. I'd definitely get a 300 Weatherby, a 257 Weatherby. I'd get a 6.5 Weatherby RPM, and I'd get a 338 Weatherby RPM as well. Then I'd probably throw something else in there, like a 7mm Weatherby or a 27 Weatherby. It wouldn't matter what I went with, but if I really did start over, it would be a tough decision between Winchester cartridges or Hornady cartridges. One of those 2 would probably be where I go. And then if I didn't have to go with just one, of course, I would go with a mixture of both. All right, so I'm going to end it there. Tell me, if you had to start over and you could only go with one manufacturer, which one would it be, and what cartridges would you pick? And then, are you interested in the 25 Creedmoor or the 22 Creedmoor? Do they seem appealing to you? Are you looking forward to them? Are you excited about them? And what do you think about their history and how old has become new again? So leave that in the comments below. And if you'll check the description below, you'll see links to Patreon and Instagram and Twitter and my website and my email and my other 2 channels that I have linked in there as well. Appreciate you guys today. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. More gun-related content coming. And hope you've had a great day. And until next time, take care.